It was a bright morning in the old city of Rome many hundred years ago. In a vine-covered summer house in a beautiful garden, two boys were standing. They were looking at their mother and her friend, who were walking among the flowers and the trees. "Did you ever see such a lady as our mother's friend?" asked the younger boy, holding his tall brother's hand. "She looks like a queen." "Yet she is not so beautiful as her mother," said the elder boy. "She has a fine dress, it is true, but her face is not noble and kind. It is our mother who is like a queen." So the first question is, what is the setting? So if you'd like to, you can pause the video and think about this, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So in the first paragraph, particularly when we see the highlighted portion here, this gives us the information that we need to know about the setting. And here, the story is set in Rome, in a summer house in a garden many hundreds of years ago. Now, you might get a question on your test where they give you a passage and they ask you what is the setting of the story. So it's important to know how to find the setting. And the setting is just where the story takes place and also when. Here, the story is taking place in a garden in Rome, and we don't know the exact year, but we know it was a long time ago. And also, whenever you're reading a story, a good habit to get into is to ask yourself, what is the setting of the story? And that should help your reading comprehension. So your next question is, how many characters were introduced in the text above? So let me give you a chance now, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is 4. There are the two boys, there's the mother's friend, and the mother. So we have 4 characters total here. "That is true," said the other. "There is no woman in Rome so much like a queen as our own dear mother." Soon Cornelia, their mother, came down the walk to speak with them. She was simply dressed in a plain white robe. Her arms and feet were bare, as was the custom in those days, and no rings nor chains glittered about her hands and neck. For her only crown, long braids of soft brown blank were coiled about her head, and a tender smile lit up her noble face as she looked into her son's proud eyes. And this little red squiggly line, that's just something my computer's doing. That doesn't have anything to do with the passage or the question. And the real question is, which word most likely fits in the blank above? Is it A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now, if you'd like to pause the video, think about this, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is B, hair. And we should note here that it tells us that no rings or chains were around her hands and neck, so we'd assume from that this isn't talking about a necklace. So let's go on here now. The story says, "Boys," she said, "I have something to tell you." They bowed before her, as Roman lads were taught to do, and said, "What is it, mother?" "You are to dine with us today, here in the garden. And then our friend is going to show us that wonderful casket of jewels of which you have heard so much." The brothers looked shyly at their mother's friend. Was it possible that she had still other rings besides those on her fingers? Could she have other gems besides those which sparkled in the chains about her neck? When the simple outdoor meal was over, a servant brought the casket from the house. The lady opened it. Ah, how those jewels dazzled the eyes of wondering boys. There were ropes of pearls, white as milk and smooth as satin, heaps of shining rubies, red as the glowing coal, sapphires as blue as the sky that summer day, and diamonds that flashed and sparkled like the sunlight. And again, this red line here is just a mark my computer is making, so just ignore that. It doesn't have to do with the passage. And the question is, the part of the sentence above that says diamonds that flashed and sparkled like the sunlight, and is an example of which type of figurative language? Is this A, B, C, or D? So now is your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is a simile. And if you see a comparison between two things that uses the word like or the word as, that's a simile. On the other hand, how would you know if it's a metaphor? Well, a metaphor compares two things without using like or as. And personification, it kind of sounds like person. The first part of the word is person. Personification, what that means is giving human characteristics to something that's not human. The brothers looked long at the gems. "Ah," whispered the younger, "if our mother could only have such beautiful things. At last, however, the casket was closed and carried carefully away. "Is it true, Cornelia, that you have no jewels?" asked her friend. As Cornelia spoke, she drew her two boys to her side. "For here are my jewels. They are worth more than all your gems." I am sure that the boys never forgot their mother's pride and love and care, and after years, when they had become great men in Rome, they often thought of the scene in the garden, and the world still likes to hear the story of Cornelia's jewels. Okay, so the question here is, which of the following is the theme of the passage? A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll talk about this. So the correct answer here is B. Some things are worth more than material possessions. And we see here where Cornelia, she's asked, "Oh, don't you have any jewels?" And she pulls her boys to her side and says, "For here are my jewels. They're worth more than all your gems." And you might be wondering, well, what is the theme exactly? Well, the theme is the message that the writer wants you to understand. Now, it could be a statement that the writer's making about human nature or life in general. And sometimes that theme is going to be told to you directly and made pretty obvious what the theme is. And sometimes you're going to have to read between the lines and infer that theme a little bit more based on what's happening in the story. But we've now talked about several elements here of what I like to call the SCCT method, which is setting, characters, conflict, and theme. And a good habit to get into, a good strategy when you're reading passages, is to ask yourself, what is the setting? And take note of the setting, and especially when the setting's changing, take note of who the characters are. The conflict is just kind of like the conflicts that the characters have with each other, or it could be with someone else, or it could be the character has a conflict against nature. And then the theme, like I said, is just that message that the writer wants you to understand. And usually I like to say that if you really understand the setting and the characters and just kind of follow what's going on in the story, the conflict and theme often jump out at you. But anyway, we go on here. There once lived in Greece, and we're switching to a new story now. There once lived in Greece a very wise man whose name was Socrates. Young men from all parts of the land went to him to learn wisdom from him. And he said so many pleasant things, and said them in so delightful a way, that no one ever grew tired of listening to him. One summer he built himself a house, but it was so small that his neighbors wondered how he could be content with it. "What is the reason," they said, "that you, who are so great a man, should build such a little house, such a little box as this for your dwelling house?" "Indeed, there may be little reason," said he, "but small as the place is, I shall think myself happy if I can fill even it with true friends." So we're going to get some more practice with theme, and this time, rather than having multiple choice answers, I'd like you to think about this, and I tried to pick a really short passage here that you can see all the text on the screen. What do you think the theme of the passage is here? And there's no right or wrong answer. This is just to get some practice, critical thinking, and to really help you hopefully understand how to find the theme better. So this is for you to come up with your own answer, and you can just come up with it in your head. You can just write it down on a sheet of paper, put it down in the comments if you'd like to, whatever you want to do here, but I'll give you a chance to pause the video and think about this now. So, like I said, there's not really a right or wrong answer here, and sometimes when there's artwork or writing, there are multiple ways to interpret it. I would say maybe good friends are hard to find. I don't know. That is what I kind of see here. But like I said, there's not a right or wrong answer here. This video's champion shoutout goes to a test taker who says, "Yesterday I passed my last test, which was math. I'm 51 years old and now have my GED, so I want to give this test taker big congratulations, and anyone out there that's watching this, just know that through hard work, if you stick with it and keep going, no matter how hard it seems, someday you can be done too." Okay, so switching gears here. In the Far East, there was a great king who had no work to do. Every day and all day long, he sat on soft cushions and listened to stories. And no matter what the story was about, he never grew tired of hearing it, even though it was very long. "There's only one fault that I find with your story," he often said. "It is too short." All the storytellers in the world were invited to his palace, and some of them told tales that were very long indeed, but the king was always sad when a story was ended. So the first question here in the text above, the king blank after hearing stories, A, B, C, or D. So now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and of course, whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is B, right? But the king was always sad when a story ended. So in the text above, the king is disappointed after hearing stories. So sad and disappointed are kind of ways of saying the same thing. The idea here is that the king, he doesn't feel satisfied after hearing the story. In fact, the opposite happens. He's sad, he's upset, he's disappointed. And so B is the correct answer here. At last he sent word into every city and town and country place, offering a prize to anyone who should tell him an endless tale. He said, "To the man that will tell me a story which shall last forever, I will give my fairest daughter for his wife, and I will make him my heir, and he shall be king after me." But this was not all. He added a very hard condition. If any man shall try to tell such a story and then fail, he shall be banished. So the question here, which of the following is the best description of the king? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is C, powerful. Now, if the king is going to banish people for failing at the task, I wouldn't consider that an example of someone being kind, so we could take A out. And the first part where I have highlighted, it says, "At last he sent word into every city and town and country place, offering a prize to anyone who should tell him an endless tale." So that kind of sounds like he's powerful to me because he's able to communicate a message to the city, town, and country place, and also he's offering a prize here. And he says, "I will make him my heir," meaning whoever wins the task will get inheritance and money or whatever the king has to offer. The king's daughter was very pretty, and there were many young men in the country who were willing to do anything to win her, but none of them wanted to be banished, and so only a few tried for the prize. One young man invented a story that lasted 3 months, but at the end of that time he could think of nothing more. His fate was a warning to others, and it was a long time before another storyteller was so rash as to try the king's patience. Which of the following is true? A, B, C, or D. So as always, now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video. You can take all the time you need to reread this or study this question, and whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is B. The young man failed at his attempt to tell the king a story. It says, "One young man invented a story that lasted 3 months, but at the end of that time he could think of nothing more. His fate was a warning to others." But one day a stranger from the south came into the palace. "Great king," he said, "is it true that you offer a prize to the man who can tell a story that has no end?" "It is true," said the king. "And shall this man have your fairest daughter for his wife, and shall be your heir?" "Yes, if he succeeds," said the king, "but if he fails, he shall be banished." "Very well then," said the stranger, "I have a blank story about locusts, which I would like to relate." "Tell it," said the king, "I will listen to you." The storyteller began his tale. So the question is, which of the following words most likely fits into the blank above? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now is your chance, as always, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the answer here that is correct is B, pleasant. I have a pleasant story about locusts which I would like to relate. Now, the word short, right, the whole purpose behind the king's challenge is that he wants the stranger to try to tell him a story that will last forever. So if the story was short, right, he probably wouldn't be telling it in front of the king because he would just be banished for not having a story that lasts forever. Okay. Once upon a time, a certain king seized upon all the corn in his country and stored it away in a strong granary. But a swarm of locusts came over the land and saw where the grain had been put. After searching for many days, they found on the east side of the granary a blank that was just large enough for one locust to pass through at a time. So one locust went in and carried away a grain of corn. Then another locust went in and carried away a grain of corn. Then another locust went in and carried away a grain of corn. Which of the following words most likely fits in the blank above? Is it A, B, C, or D? So the correct answer here is C, a crevice. Day after day, week after week, the man kept on saying, "Then another locust went in and carried away a grain of corn." A month passed, a year passed. At the end of 2 years, the king said, "How much longer will the locust be going in and carrying away corn?" "O king," said the storyteller, "they have as yet cleared only 1 cubit, and there are many thousand cubits in the granary." "Man, man," cried the king, "you will drive me mad. I can listen to it no longer. Take my daughter, be my heir, rule my kingdom, but do not let me hear another word about those horrible locusts." And so the strange storyteller married the king's daughter, and he lived happily in the land for many years. But his father-in-law, the king, did not care to listen to any more stories. In your own words, please paraphrase the text above. Please limit your answer to just 1 to 3 sentences. Now, you don't necessarily need to paraphrase the entire story. You can just paraphrase what's happening in the text above. And let me give you a chance to do this. You can pause the video, and again, you can do it in your head. You can write it out on a sheet of paper. You can type it, whatever works for you. And then whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. Okay, so and the text is admittedly kind of small on the screen, so sorry for having such small text on the screen, in case it's hard to read, but it was hard to get all this on the screen. But anyway, here's what I wrote. The storyteller told a repetitive story until the king got tired of hearing it. It looks like I didn't type the sentence right, but anyway, the storyteller got to marry the king's daughter, and the king never wanted to hear another story. So essentially what's happening here is the king presents this ridiculous challenge of telling a story that's going to last forever. So this stranger just steps up and just goes on and on and on with this story, just kind of repeating the same thing over and over and over again about these locusts, and it just drives the king crazy, and he essentially wins the challenge because the king gets sick of hearing it, and he marries the king's daughter and lives happily ever after. That's probably more than just 1 to 3 sentences. But anyway, obviously, everyone's going to have different answers here. There was really no right or wrong answer here. This is just to get practice paraphrasing. And you might wonder, well, why is paraphrasing so important? Well, this is a good tip for reading comprehension, is to just every now and then pause and ask yourself if you understand what's happening well enough to explain it to someone else. Maybe pause every now and then and put things in your own words in your head. This is actually a really powerful reading comprehension tip. And, this might not make a whole lot of sense if you're reading passages on your test to just keep pausing like every few seconds. You're probably going to run out of time if you keep doing that, but maybe every now and then you'll have to use your own judgment. But if you just pause and ask, do I understand what's happening? Do I understand this well enough to explain it to somebody else? And if you don't, then, you might want to slow down or, reread parts of the passage to try to figure out what you're missing. And that's just a good general tip to get in when you're reading. I know that sometimes I'll be reading a story or a book or an article on my own, and, I'll be, daydreaming or something, and I'll have to stop and realize that I'm not following what's happening, and I'll have to go back and reread. So now I want to talk about the rap paraphrasing strategy, and if you're new to my channel here or you're new to my reading comprehension videos, then hopefully this strategy will be helpful for you. I really appreciate you being here on my channel, and I hope this video has been helpful so far. And if you have watched my videos before on reading comprehension, you've probably seen me talk about this before, but welcome back. I really appreciate you coming back and watching another video. And either way, if you're new here and this is the first time you're hearing about rap, or if you've seen it before on my channel, this is a really, really helpful strategy. And the R stands for read the paragraph, and the A stands for ask what's the main idea and choose supporting ideas, and the P stands for paraphrase, or in other words, put it in your own words. And if you're wondering what's the main idea is the main point of the paragraph. Now, this can often be found in one sentence. That might not always be the case, but it can be. And some clues to the main idea could be repetition. If an author keeps saying the same thing again in different ways, that could be a clue that that's the main idea. Also, a really good question to help you find the main idea is to ask yourself, what title would you give the paragraph or the passage, right? So if I gave you a passage to read, and I said, hey, you pick a title, what would you call this paragraph or passage? That can kind of help you zoom into what the main idea is. And supporting ideas are just ideas that support the main idea. These can be facts and examples. So basically, I've heard people explain it this way before. If you think about a table, the main idea is the table and the supporting idea are the legs. The supporting ideas hold up or support that main idea. So how do we paraphrase, and what does that really mean? Well, paraphrasing is just putting things in your own words, and I'm sure you've already done this before, whether you thought about it this way or not. Have you ever had a time where you watched a TV show or a movie, and your friend asked you, hey, what was that movie about, or what was that TV show about, and you had to put in your own words what the show was about or what the movie was about? That's just what we mean here by paraphrasing, and this is a really, really powerful way, like I said, to comprehend what you're reading, and more importantly, to make sure you're comprehending what you're reading. Because if you read a paragraph and then someone asks you, can you explain this in your own words, and you have trouble explaining it in your own words, that could be a sign that you might not understand the paragraph as well as you could. And I just want to note here that, this is a strategy that, you can use while you're practicing. You can use this on the main test, on the real test too, to help your reading comprehension, but I would just highly recommend that you obviously use your own judgment as far as how often to do this, right? Like, you might run out of time if after every paragraph on the test you stop and you think, what's the main idea here? What's the supporting idea? What's one thing you think you should be doing more often? Probably eating more healthy foods, although I have gotten a lot better than I used to be. What do you think would be the worst thing about being famous? Probably not being able to go out in public without people recognizing you. Okay, so now we're switching gears. No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. That as men bruised themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacency, men went to and fro over this globe about their little affairs, serene in their assurance of their empire over matter. So the question here is, the word serene above most likely means which of the following? Is it A, B, C, or D? So as always, now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the answer here is B, peaceful. It is possible that the infusoria, I actually really don't know how to pronounce that word, but that's my best guess, under the microscope do the same. No one gave a thought of the older worlds of space as sources of human danger, or thought of them only to dismiss the idea of life upon them as impossible or improbable. It is curious to recall some of the mental habits of those departed days, as most terrestrial men fancied there might be other men upon Mars, perhaps inferior to themselves. Yet across the gulf of space, minds that are to our minds as ours are to those of the beasts that perish, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. The narrator would most likely agree with which of the following statements? If the Martians are real, they most likely aren't dangerous. B. If Martians are real, they most likely aren't as advanced as our civilization. C. People don't give enough thought to the possibility that aliens exist. D. It is possible for life to exist on Mars, but not on the dark side of the moon. So now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video. Try to figure this out as always, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is C. People don't give enough thought to the possibility that aliens exist. The thing about D here is that The Dark Side of the Moon is not, it's a really good album by Pink Floyd, but the actual Dark Side of the Moon is not brought up here in this passage at all. So usually if an answer choice is adding information that wasn't brought up in the passage at all, it's probably going to be wrong. So D is wrong here. C, people don't give enough thought to the possibility that aliens exist. This is the right answer here. And the highlighted text on screen kind of tells us this, where it says, no one gave a thought to the older worlds of space as sources of human danger, or thought of them only to dismiss the idea of life upon them as impossible or improbable. So he's basically saying that people think, oh, it's either impossible or improbable, and they're just dismissive of the idea that there's life on other planets. And he's kind of critiquing people for having that idea. Planet Mars, I scarcely need remind the reader, revolves about the sun at a mean distance of 140 million miles, I think that is what that is, and the light and heat it receives from the sun is barely half of that received by this world. It must be, if the nebular hypothesis has any truth, older than our world, and long before this earth ceased to be molten, life upon its surfaces must have begun its course. The fact that it is scarcely 1/7 of the volume of the Earth must have accelerated its cooling to the blank at which life would begin. It has air and water and all that is necessary for the support of animated existence. So the next question is, which of the following words most likely fits in the blank above? Is it A, B, C, or D? And the correct answer here is C, temperature. The Martians seem to have calculated their descent with amazing subtlety. Their mathematical learning is evidently far in excess of ours, and to have carried out their preparations with a well-nigh perfect unanimity. Had our instruments permitted it, we might have seen the gathering trouble far back in the 19th century. Men like, I have no idea how to pronounce that name, watched the red planet. It is odd, by the by, that for centuries Mars has been the start of war, but failed to interpret the fluctuating appearances of the markings that mapped so well. All that time the Martians must have been getting ready. Okay, so the next question says, Schiaparelli, I'm honestly not sure how to pronounce that name, was most likely which of the following? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, take all the time you need to reread this, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is B, a scientist. So the clue here that he's a scientist is basically that it says he watched the red planet, and he's trying to, or I guess he failed to interpret fluctuating appearances, but he's basically doing some kind of study.
Tommy, do you want to help with reading comprehension? Doesn't look like it.
During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens, I had been passing alone on horseback through a singularly dreary tract of country, and at length found myself, as the shades of the evening drew on, within view of the melancholy house of Usher. So the first question here is, what is the setting? So let me give you a chance now, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here, or you might not have had this exact answer written down, but as long as you saw some of these main points here, consider that you get the right answer here. Again, the setting is when and where the story takes place. So there's a couple details here that kind of tell us when and where this is taking place. So first of all, we see that this is taking place in autumn or fall of the year. We also see that this is taking place in evening. We're not sure exactly if it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whenever, but it just tells us here that as the shades of evening drew on. We also see that this is within the view of this house of Usher. So we're not exactly sure what the house of Usher is. It's not made clear yet at this point in the story, but it's near this so-called house of Usher. And at one other point here, I didn't jot this down, but I highlighted it. This word country. This word country kind of gives us a clue here that this isn't taking place in a big city. So when you're picturing what's happening with the story here, just little details like that can sometimes help you picture it better, because this is taking place in the country and not necessarily like a big city. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I say insufferable, for the feeling was unrelieved by any of the half-pleasurable, because poetic sentiment with which the mind usually receives even the sternest natural images of the desolate or terrible. I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house, and the simple landscape features of the domain, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye-like windows, upon a few rank sedges, and upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with an utter depression of soul. So now the question is, the word sedges above most likely refers to which of the following? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So basically, the correct answer here is B, plants, and this is a question where you just maybe have to kind of use process of elimination, or just kind of try your best to reason your way through it, just kind of read between the lines here. Some clues that the answer might be plants could be the word landscape tells us that when I hear the word landscape, at least I think of kind of a yard, which I don't have much of a yard. I guess we have a little bit of grass outside, but I live in an apartment, so we don't have much of a landscape. But a landscape, I think of that as just kind of like a yard. And so basically, what could be in a yard? Well, plants could be in a yard. This little part that I highlighted where it talks about trunks of decayed trees, if there's trees there could also be plants there. So this is just one of those questions where you just have to try your best and try your best to reason your way through it. At the end of the day, just pick which answer you think is the best, hope it's right, and move on to the next question. There was an iciness, a sinking, a sickening of the heart, an unredeemed dreariness of thought, which no goading of the imagination would torture into aught of the sublime. What was it, I paused to think, what was it that so unnerved me in the contemplation of the house of Usher? It was a mystery all insoluble, nor could I grapple with the shadowy fancies that crowded upon me as I pondered. I was forced to fall back upon the unsatisfactory conclusion that while beyond doubt there are combinations of very simple natural objects which have the power of thus affecting us, still the analysis of this power lies among considerations beyond our depth. So your question here is, which point of view does the author use to tell the story? Is it first person, second person, or third person? So now is your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the correct answer here is A, first person. And the clearest clue that a story is in first person is when you see the word I. If there's a person telling the story and the person is saying, I did this, or I thought this, or I was forced, or whatever it says here in this story, that word I is a clue that we're in the first person. So if I said, I walk up the stairs, that would be first person. Now, second person, a clue is that you're going to see the word you a lot. So if I said, you walk up the stairs, that would be second person. Now, third person is when you see a clue is when you keep seeing the person's name. Like Parker walked up the stairs. That would be an example of third person. I guess Tommy's not a person. I don't know. Is it still third person if we're talking about a cat? I'm not sure, but hopefully you get the point here between first, second, and third person. Nevertheless, in this mansion of gloom, I now propose to myself a sojourn of some weeks. Its proprietor, Roderick Usher, had been one of my boon companions in boyhood, but many years had elapsed since our last meeting. A letter, however, had lately reached me in a distant part of the country. A letter from him, which in its wildly importunate nature had omitted of no other than a personal reply. Alright, so the question is, how many characters are there in the story so far? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Let me give you a chance now to pause the video, try this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So far there's 2 different characters. We have the main character, the narrator, and we've got this Roderick Usher who was just introduced into the story. So 2. The MS gave evidence of nervous agitation. The writer spoke of acute bodily illness, which oppressed him, and of an earnest desire to see me as his best and indeed his only personal friend, with a view of attempting by the cheerfulness of my society some alleviation of his malady. It was the manner in which all this and much more was said. It was the apparent heart that went with his request, which allowed me no room for hesitation, and I accordingly obeyed forthwith what I still considered a very singular summons. Okay, so we see the sentence that's bolded up above, and the question is, the sentence that says his reserve had been always excessive and habitual most likely means that Roderick Usher is A, B, C, or D. So now's your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is B, shy. So saying that his reserve had always been excessive and habitual is basically kind of like saying he's always been very reserved, which is another way of saying he's always been very shy. So B is the right answer here. On the hypothesis that dreams are susceptible of interpretation, I at once find myself in disagreement with the prevailing doctrine of dreams. In fact, with all the theories of dreams excepting only that of Scherner, for to interpret a dream is to specify its meaning, to replace it by something which takes its position in the concatenation, I think is how you say that, I really don't know, of our psychic activities as a link of definite importance and value. But as we have seen, the scientific theories of the dream leave no room for a problem of dream interpretation, since in the first place, according to these theories, dreaming is not a psychic activity at all, but a somatic process which makes itself known to the psychic apparatus by means of symbols. So the first question here is, what does that word that I can't say, concatenation, most likely mean? Is it A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now to pause the video, try to figure this out, and take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the correct answer here is B, a series of interconnected events or things. So this is another one of those types of questions where you just kind of have to maybe use process of elimination and eliminate stuff that seems out of place. Like for example, the passage here doesn't mention a natural disaster, so I would probably take D out just based off of that. But anyway, B is the correct answer here. And again, this is one of those questions where you just kind of have to try your best to reason your way through it. Go with your best guess and move on. Which of the following is most likely true according to lay opinion? Let me read the passage. It says, lay opinion has always been opposed to these theories. It asserts its privilege of proceeding illogically, and although it admits that dreams are incomprehensible and absurd, it cannot summon up the courage to deny that dreams have any significance. Led by a dim intuition, it seems rather to assume that dreams have a meaning, albeit a hidden one, that they are intended as a substitute for some other thought process, and that we have only to disclose this substitute correctly in order to discover the hidden meaning of the dream. Okay, so here's the question. Which of the following is most likely true according to lay opinion? A. Dreams have no significance. B. Dreams are not a substitute for some other thought process. C. Interpreting the substitute for another thought process correctly reveals the hidden meaning of a dream. Or D. Dreams are a way to communicate with aliens. So now's your chance to pause the video, take all the time you need, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So C is the correct answer here. Now, A is incorrect here because we're told that lay opinion can't deny that dreams have any significance. So that's why we'd take A out. And then what about B? Well, B is wrong because the text says that they are intended as a substitute. So that's why B would be wrong. And D, what's wrong with D? Well, this passage doesn't mention anything about aliens, so we would assume that that's not what the lay opinion is because the passage doesn't mention aliens. So that's just another example of oftentimes if you see information that's added in an answer choice that wasn't brought up in the passage, a lot of times those answers are just bogus answers that you can take out. And another takeaway here from this question here, and this is a little trick I'm going to give you, and this isn't always guaranteed to work, but sometimes if you have to guess, sometimes look at the longest answer choice, the longest and most wordy answer choice. Sometimes that's going to be the correct answer, and the theory behind that is that, or at least what I think is that sometimes when test writers, they have to write the question, they'll start by writing out the correct answer. And then the other answer choices, they don't really put as much effort into, so sometimes they end up shorter and less wordy and less specific. So again, this isn't always going to work. It's not a guaranteed trick that's always going to work. But sometimes if you're completely stumped, guess the longest answer choice. The longest and most wordiest answer choice is sometimes what I would guess if you're completely stumped and you have nothing else to go off of. But again, that's not always going to work.
Unfortunately, my laptop keeps dying, it keeps shutting off, and it's done it a couple times in the middle of recording. I keep having to restart it, and I'm in the process of getting a new laptop and switching everything over, but I'm not there yet, so unfortunately I'm going to have to stop here today. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I really hope this was helpful. I did want to put more in, but that's just kind of where I'm at today, so thanks for understanding and good luck.